So, Bana, it is so good to see you. And thank you so much for being a guest here with me today on Women Winning Their Way. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am good. And I feel very honored because I'm sitting here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and you are like a whole other world away. Where are you in the world?
So I'm located in Kuwait now, and I'm based in the Middle East. So yes, we are time zones apart, as they say.
Exactly. But in this world, we're more connected than we think we are. And
Absolutely.
you and I connected last year at a women's conference in Madrid, Spain. And we were both speaking there. And I was really, connected with you because you do so much with leadership. Not only are you an expert in leadership and organizational development, you are a philanthropist, you're a consultant, you do so much in the world of nonprofit. And I wanted to bring you on, not just as an expert to talk about women in business, but also to highlight, because so many people that are watching and following the show are entrepreneurial. And we can sit down and we can look at the trajectory and say, oh, they went from point A to point B, and look, they're so successful. But sometimes that journey is not as well laid out. And I know that that's something that you spoke about, is that, on paper, it might look like it was all planned out, but that it really didn't happen that way. So tell us a little bit about you and your journey that brought you from the Middle East to America, back to the Middle East, and where you are now.
Sure. So I always say this when you're doing a speech and someone reads your biography and there's a moment and you're like, that's not a clear representation of the journey at all. It just looks like an upward trajectory when there's actually so many times where there is, moments of confusion, moments of no clarity, but you just keep on going. So I'll tell you a little bit about my journey. So I was raised in the Middle East. I had two incredible parents that were so invested in my education. I moved to the U.S. for university. I stayed there. I graduated with my bachelor's degree, and then I started my first journey, or I'll say my professional journey, in journalism. I did that for a couple of years, and left the field, went back to school yet again, and then became a consultant in Washington D.C. And then at the age of 30, I actually went through a personal loss. And I decided that it was maybe time for me to come back to the Middle East and take the knowledge and the skills that I gained in the US and start contributing to a community that made me who I am today, as well as my time in America. I always attribute a lot of the woman that I am. Sorry, I'm like mumbling the words, but I attribute the woman that I am today to my time being spent in America as well as in the Middle East. And so I came back and I actually started my journey in the nonprofit world. So I worked for a nonprofit in Qatar, dedicated to education. I did that for a couple of years. And then I moved into a nonprofit in Kuwait, dedicated to pediatric healthcare. And about a year and a half, I decided it was time to go independent. And I'm still consulting in nonprofit. I actually graduated during that time with my doctorate in leadership. So there's my commitment to building the next generation of leaders. And I also am still doing some philanthropic work in pediatric healthcare.
I mean, you are just doing so many beautiful things, and keeping it all together. It's just, it's kind of overwhelming. You look at this big thing and you're doing all of these with such grace. I want to kind of go back a little bit, and I want to ask you, because I think so many times, we see that there could be more for us in a different area. I know, like, my oldest sister went over to Italy for school. You came here to America, but sometimes people think that that's weird. And then also here in America, I hate to say it, but sometimes there's a little bit of a negative stigma on women from the Middle East as being, not as strong as they might be, or not having their own voice. And clearly you do. So I would love to talk about what were some of the cultural things and, expectations and standards that you had to face and possibly get over in, coming here and then also going home.
People have very different perceptions of a Middle Eastern woman, right? And so when I was in the States, you know, they had, there was a perception of what a typical Middle Eastern woman is or isn't. And then when you come back to the Middle East, I think a Middle Eastern woman, like all women, is dynamic. They all have voice. I believe that every woman in this world has a voice. Now, whether they use it or they use it consistently, that's their choice. But I have met some of the biggest change makers in the Middle East. I am inspired every single day by the young women that I meet. I mean, I've worked in Qatar, I've worked in Kuwait and in Saudi. I mean, they are, so many of them have been my source of inspiration. And it's not necessarily women of the Middle East. I think a source of inspiration have been women all over the world. And I think now we are owning our stories, we are owning our voices, and we're contributing to organizations and leadership in many ways that are absolutely essential as you know the realm of leadership is moving forward.
Mm. Do you find that women in general always feel that maybe they have to justify their decisions? Saying things such as, if a woman, decides to work outside the home, oh, but I still love my children. Or if somebody decides to again maybe go back home because they want to also take care of their family. Oh, but I love what I do, but I love my this family too. It's like they always feel like they have to soften it or justify it. Do you find that with a lot of women in business?
I do, but I think it's changing now because I think the narrative of leadership is changing, right? Leadership, there's such a flexibility and adaptability, and leadership, the look of leadership is changing, right? What does an ideal leader look like? I actually went to grad school because I wanted to kind of understand how to be the best leader. I walked away from grad school actually not even having the answer to that question, and there is no right answer to that question, right? Anybody can be a leader. Yes, there are some values and some skills and some behaviors that we want evident in leadership. However, I think women today, and I hope women today are changing that narrative, right? And so it's not one or the other. You know, people talk about, can you have it all and have it all at once as a woman? I think in life we make sacrifices throughout our journey, and it's not an easy journey. But what's most important is that journey. It's authentic to you, and there is no one size fits all success model. I've been looking for it for my entire adult life, and I've only come to the conclusion that I can only define success, and I can only define what it looks like for me in the current chapter that I am in. And as much as possible, I'm going to try to align. Some days
Yeah.
I do it well, some days I don't, and the acceptance of that is really key.
I think that is so beautiful. And I really hope people keyed in on that because I agree with you so much. I use the word trade offs, where you use the word sacrifice, because I agree. I think we can have different versions of it all at different times. But regardless of if you have a family or not, life is about trade offs.
Right,
Even in business, sometimes, we have a lot of people that are entrepreneurs, and sometimes you reduce your fee or you give a discount when it makes good business sense. It's a trade off. And I think, again, we have to look at those and really do this. And I think a good leader understands that,
right,
what is the trade off that is going to be best for the organization? We have to
right,
look at that. And I love that you're talking about that it's very authentic and it's not one size fits all, because I think we have to remember whether you are running an organization, a solopreneur, or even just on your own, you're leading. We all lead. It could be a
yep,
team, it could be a company, it could be ourselves. But we
yeah,
have to remember that, again, using that voice, but looking at the overall picture and balancing those sacrifices and those trade offs. Can you think about and can you share any, maybe what are some of the trade offs or sacrifices that you have made along the way for the bigger picture?
I think I spent, and this is going a bit into my personal, I spent many years, putting my head down and working really, really hard, because I think I had my own professional goals that I wanted to reach and academic goals. But sometimes, and this is where in leadership, there's three prongs to it. It's leading yourself, leading others, and then leading an organization. Sometimes when you're so busy leading an organization and leading a team, you sometimes forget the leading yourself aspect of it. And I think that's equally as important. Taking the time to understand, okay, where am I at? Where do I want to go? Why is this important to me? And it was only until I left about a year and a half ago where I had to actually get off the treadmill and stop. And it was a hard treadmill to get off without plan B, C, D, E, and F, because that's just the antithesis of me. that leading self, I actually became a student of all over again,
Wow.
because it's absolutely essential. You can't, you have to take care of you, even though you're taking care of an organization and a team, but you also have to take care of you.
Absolutely.
And one of the greatest lessons that I learned, and this is something that I think is fundamental for leaders and everywhere in the globe, is know your values as a leader and revisit them and just make sure from time to time there's alignment in them. And when they're not, it's time for reflection. It's time to say, well, why isn't there an alignment? You know, what's going on here?
Mm,
Whether it's my decisions in alignment to the organization, whether it's my values with alignment with myself. And these are really critical reflection points that are going to help you for your trajectory forward.
yeah. I think people sometimes struggle with value. They think they have to go and, create this massive and, profound mission statement. Do you have any, easy tips or exercises that you run some of your people through to help them uncover and start to learn what their values are?
So, okay, I'll ask with a mission statement. So, if a mission statement does not make sense to you, please erase and let's go back to the very beginning. And that same advice I give to values, right? So, take a list, take any list, and say, what do I value? And there's two parts of this question because it's your personal and your professional values. And I do believe that there is alignment. And then once you've identified those, build a definition, right? What does compassion mean to me? It doesn't have to sound pretty. We're not placing on a website. It has to sound authentic to you. Once you've defined it, and that's why with every exercise of like reflection, I go back to defining what it means to you because that definition has to resonate within you. Now, leaders have to know organization that their defined values are matching the organization or there's comprehensive alignment to it. So I think what I always say, take a list of words, pick the top five, define them, and then revisit them from time and time again. There are non-negotiable values that will never change. But I believe we all have professional chapters. So I would say one value that came into my value bank for this current chapter that I'm in professionally is the word courage. Now, if you asked me that 5 years ago, I wouldn't have placed that as one of my top five values, but now it's on my top file. I choose to try to be more courageous in this next chapter of me moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. As busy professional women, we need to stay on top of our health and energy. The Working Women's Channel is proud to partner with Snapback Energy as a sponsor for today's episode because they help us to show up as the best version of ourselves so we can take on the day no matter what is thrown our way. At Snapback Energy, their scientifically perfected formula is made to make you feel great, and it also is going to increase the overall energy level you have and the health of your gut and liver. Let Snapback Energy be part of your day and help you build the energy to fuel your mind, your body, and your goals. Now, I know that you mentioned that, again, not one size fits all, but, you've studied so many leaders. Do you find some similarities, or maybe like what would you say are maybe the top three like core values or, core standards that, make a really good leader? Are there some similarities across the board?
So the leaders that I resonate the most with are the ones that are empathetic, they are visionary, they're adaptable and flexible, and they believe in a standard of excellence. Those are probably my top four. They believe
I
in a
love
standard of excellence. And they are, and we, the word authenticity is used quite often. And I'm going to define what authenticity means to me. To me, when I say, oh, I perceive that leader to be a very authentic leader, is that there is an alignment between their values, their actions, and their decisions and their interactions. They may make mistakes. No one's perfect. You know what? That's the law of the universe. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to make failures, but they're okay with raising their hand and saying, I could have done this better. This is what I learned from this experience. This is how I'm going to grow from it. Those are the leaders. Those are the key attributes that I look for or I try to emulate as
it.
I'm growing in my leadership journey from other leaders that I've met.
And I think that that is really powerful because I know that I've been in situations where I was looking at my leadership and there was not an alignment. They were saying one thing, but their
Right.
actions were not backing it up. And it starts to devalue and you start to, I would say, lose faith, in the leadership that they have. And it does build a disconnect. So I think not that you're going to be perfect, but doing as much to stay in that alignment and to, again, model the behavior that you're speaking and that you're setting forth again in those standards as well. I think that's really huge.
I had one of when I was in Qatar, I will never forget one of the leaders that I looked up immensely. And one day, it was a tense time and he came to the meeting. He said, "You know what? I'm a lifelong learner in this." And this is an expert in their field, right? And I was very young. And it stuck with me, right? Because he was giving all of us in that room, including himself, the permission to make a mistake. And he asked us to come in the room as learners.
Hmm.
Yes, we all had leadership roles, but we were students again. We are all students of our professional journey. Yes, we have titles, we have leadership titles, but we are students in this journey. We are continuously learning for the evolution of ourselves and for the evolution of the people that we're going to lead in the organizations that we're going to lead. And people ask me, "Are you an expert in leadership?" I always say I'm a student in leadership. So I'm
Oh,
still
that.
in school. I am trying to figure it out as much as anybody else. And
Mhm.
I think when you take that approach, that pressure is a bit taken off, and you allow yourself the grace to
Wow.
navigate this journey.
That's incredible. That's really powerful. Thank you for bringing that up. One of the things that I think a good leader can also do is help to navigate through change. The one constant is change. And in
Right.
this world that is moving so fast, change is happening all the time. So,
Right.
what are some things that a leader can do to instill confidence, courage, all of these things with their team, with their employees, even sometimes with themselves during changing times?
So I think I would give like three advice in this area. So I would say one, communicate, communicate, and communicate. Change
Mhm.
is uncertain. It during change there's uncertainty. And if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just from a psychological perspective, safety comes first, and that's psychological safety, right? When we talk about psychological safety in organizations, and when there's change and there's disruption, what gets eroded? That psychological, people start feeling psychologically unsafe. So, as a leader, it's your job as much as possible to communicate. You may not be able to communicate everything, right? But silence breeds communication. Silence is a form of communication. So, communicate, give as much information as possible in a manner that is transparent and clear. The other aspect of change, I think, is being human about it. There are some aspects of change that aren't so great. So why not have that conversation that we're going through this change? There are some positive aspects of this change, but there are also some challenges, and I am recognizing them. And I am also here to tell you that those challenges also affect me too, even though I may be steering this change. And the last thing I think, especially in change, is to take the time to reflect. What did I do well? What could I improve? How am I going to take what I've learned and bring it forward the next day or the next month and the next year? So I think communicate, try to build psychological safety as much as possible, and then take that time for reflection.
Fantastic. So, one of the last things I want to talk about is this idea of empathy that you brought up, because I truly believe that empathy is probably one of the most critical workplace skills that we can be building. And our emotional intelligence, our level of empathy, really can be a higher indicator of success than even our IQ that we have. And I personally feel that with the age of technology, as beautiful as technology can be, I mean, we're using it right now, it can also take away that human element. How can a leader demonstrate empathy, especially when we are using technology to connect with our teams and our culture internally?
I'll give you, Claire, probably the best story of empathy. So I worked in pediatric healthcare, and we were in charge of psychosocial programs in hospitals. And one of the hospitals was the oncology hospital. And, I always felt that as, holding a leadership position in the organization, that when something happened to a patient or if they passed away, I had to keep it together all the time. And there was this one all the patients, when they do pass away, it affects you, although you're in healthcare, and, you do build your resilience, in trying to navigate these very difficult situations. But one time it hit me hard, and I remember I was in the hospital, and I ran to the bathroom, and I closed the bathroom door, and I'm crying, right? And I was like, Vanna, you got to get it together. Your staff needs you. It's a difficult time. And I remember one of my staff members just knocking the door, and she goes, can I come in and can I cry with you? And it was the most profound lesson in my career, right? At that time, we were going through a human experience. We weren't going through a leader and a staff and an employee's experience. We were going through a human experience. And it taught me that whether we are leaders of an organization, whether we are employees in an organization, we are human first. And taking the time to see it from that perspective and model that perspective is the root of empathy.
That's
We have
incredible.
a
Wow.
lot more
Thank you.
commonalities than differences. And it was so, and after that, I think that is something I couldn't learn in a textbook, but that was a real life experience that I said, she and I were bonding over the loss as human beings and of the pain of a patient being lost, or a family losing their child. And that stuck with me, that stuck with me for a very long time. And I hope to emulate that. We are humans first, and then moving forward from that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you so much. And yeah, bringing in that, humanity content is just it there's nothing that can replace that. And that human element is so important. And a good leader again embraces that. And
Yeah.
so I think that I appreciate you bringing that up. So, you have brought so much value just even in our short conversation. I mean, we've hit on so many amazing points and I appreciate your time so much. We are going to put all of your information in the show notes, but
Thank
just
you.
real quick, what is the best place for people to connect with you if they want to reach out, learn more, possibly even hire you?
Oh, thank you so much. You can connect with me via LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. Please feel free to send a message. And my LinkedIn's connected with my email, so you can send me an email message as well too. Thank you so much, Clara, for having this open forum of discussions, bringing women from all over the world to have their voices. I'm just a small representation of the fantastic women in the Middle East who are doing such great work. A woman of the world, to be honest. I'm just in the Middle East, but thank you for having me on your platform.
Thank you so much. So I have one last question and we'll bring it to a close. Sitting where you are today, knowing everything that you know today, how do you define success for yourself now?
Oh, I define success. That's a very good question. It's a very, very good question. So I define success as being true to my values, having faith in the future, and being in alignment with what I seek to do that is in alignment with my values. That is what success means to me.
Oh,
And you know what
fantastic.
success means to me? Maybe just taking that one tiny step forward when I don't want to take that step. And I'm going to even put it to that level.
Yeah.
Taking that step, that's also success.
That's
So
that
there's the
courage
one
that you were
step that
talking
I
about.
mentioned, but there's also take that one step. Whatever that step may look like, that is success. I'm going to
Oh,
celebrate that
wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your time and I cannot wait to share your messages. You are just so lovely. And I knew again when I met you in Madrid, I knew that you were somebody I really wanted to get on the show and have in my world. So thank you for so much that you're doing every day to not just impact women, but to impact the world.
Thank you so much. Thank you again.
Yeah. All right, everyone. What an incredible show. So I hope you were taking notes because I was taking a lot of notes going over everything she was talking about. So some of the things that I loved that she was talking about is this authenticity piece. She brought it up in the beginning, in the middle, and then again closed with it. We have to be authentic. A big part of how we are as a leader comes from inside. So don't try to be like everyone. Again, get clear. What are your values? What is the type of leader that you want to be? And again, get in alignment with that authenticity. She talked a lot about lead yourself. So many times we spend so much time trying to lead others and guide others. Don't forget to lead yourself because if we're not leading ourselves, that could contribute to us falling out of alignment. So lead yourself in your wellness, lead yourself in your growth, lead yourself in your greatness each and every day. Tying in with this, be a student. You're never going to know it all. So be curious. Always know that you can be learning more. That's going to send a strong message to those around you and also give them permission to grow stronger too. Remember, you're either growing or you're dying. So a good leader knows that there's always new things that they can learn. And she also talked about communication. Along with empathy, you got to be a good communicator. Ask questions, get clarification, clarify a path to the future. I love when we talked about if change is happening and it's uncomfortable, acknowledge that. Say, you know what? This is uncomfortable for me too. This is uncharted territory for me too. And I am here with you through it. I love the idea of, you know what? There are some challenges and there's also some beauty that can come out of this change. So, again, knowing it's not just about the disruption, oftentimes the disruption is what brings the beauty. So, we covered so many things. And remember, all of us here are leaders. We're leading organizations, we're leading teams, we're leading our families, we're leading ourselves. So, make sure, again, elevate your standards, hold yourself to a higher standard, lead from an authentic place, and always bring in that empathy. So I hope you took away as much value as I did. Please remember, share this episode with others out there that are looking to develop their leadership skills and lead from an authentic place. Make sure you personally go in, rate, review it so we can really build our reach on a global level, and make sure that you come back for next time. I'm Clara Capano. Thanks for watching another episode of Women Winning Their Way.